I've had a chance only to thumb through the publication myself, and I was ahead of the OPEC coverage that I'm planning now, and then going to St. Petersburg for the International Economic Forum there, a key non-OPEC player, of course. I'm reading with great interest also about the demand in Asia as well. Let me welcome in reverse order so you can fill the seat next to Dean Mark and then come to this side thereafter. Let's welcome Marwan Masri, we saw last night as an award winner, former president and CEO of the Canadian Energy Research Institute. If you can sit next to Dean Mark, that'd be great. Walid Khadduri is the former editor-in-chief, Middle East Economic Survey. You're just on the other side there. Thank you very much. Noé van Hulst, the ambassador of the Netherlands to the OECD and chairman of the IEA Governing Board, former Secretary General of the IEF. And His Excellency Dr. Ibrahim, Economic Advisor to His Highness the Emir of Qatar here in Doha. Terrific. Thanks. Gives you ample time to sit down. Great. Nice to see you again from our dinner last night. Just to discuss the format, we have about 45 minutes in total before we take the coffee break. Make sure you have your, if you don't mind, to have your electronic clickers at hand, because we have 5 polling questions to bring up as well. And just want to make sure, Diallo, we have microphones in the audience if indeed we have contributions. So if we can keep an eye on those microphones and just make sure that we can get them into the hands of people. Let's go about 15 minutes, and then we'll take some of the polling questions, so Stephanie can plan for that. And then during the polling questions, if you want to provide insight to those questions and the answers from our audience, we're more than welcome. We haven't heard too much after his opening comments from His Excellency Ali Naimi. We'd love to have you weigh into the debate, and His Excellency Mr. Alatia as well. We've had a great briefing so far on the geopolitics of the region, but it seems that we're very much at an inflection point when it comes to this energy transition that Sir Mark talked about last night. This is the group of the elders giving it some thought. Is this a transition that goes for 30 to 40 years gradually, or to my point, we could have shocks to the system because technology is interrupting so quickly, both on the renewable side, Dr. Ibrahim, and also because of the flexibility we're seeing now because of the shale production coming out of the United States, which clearly is not going to be confined only to North America. What are your thoughts about the pace of this transition, if you will?
Well, I mean, if you really talk about the revolution...
Excuse me for just a second. I'm going to ask the audio gentleman. Keep all the microphones up, please. Can't hear everybody. Just keep them up for the duration.
If you're talking about a low-carbon revolution, there is no revolution. In the future, it's coming.
Right.
But so far, really, if you look from 1973 until 2015, if you look at the primary energy supply, you will see that fossil fuel remained actually dominant because it was represented 86% in 1973. It's about 81, 82. And most of the decline came not really from low carbon energy, it came from nuclear, which is low carbon, but it has its own environmental problem. So from that angle, I would not say that there is a revolution. It is coming. We hope it comes soon. But how long it takes, I think a lot of people were talking from 1973 it is coming, and it didn't come. Now, if you talk about Gulf countries or OPEC countries, did they lose their edge, competitive edge? They did, but not because of the competition from renewable energy, not from the competition of the cost of production, from something they made themselves. We will talk about it if it's needed.
Oh, sure. Well, we'll get a chance to. Marwan Masri, you worked in the space of the renewable sector in California. I followed you in my time there during the 1990s. As Dr. Ibrahim was suggesting, it was a slow buildup. It hasn't happened overnight. But if you look at the investment numbers, almost like the stock market being the lead indicator for an economy, Are the billions of dollars going into the renewable sector a lead indicator that we're going to get a much more rapid change or not? From your vantage point, because you've worked in this sector and also traditional oil and gas as well.
Well, the energy transitions are not new. We've gone through wood and then moved to coal, oil and gas, and then now renewables are beginning to come into the market as a new phase of the transition. Now, these past transitions took a century or more each to move from one fuel to another. So I agree the pace is getting quicker now for energy transitions, but the missing, I think, element in discussing energy transitions is the role of policy. And transition does not happen on its own. It is driven and influenced by government policy, incentives, how the incentives are administered and used effectively or not. So in my experience, I mentioned the renewables photovoltaics last night in my brief remark. That has been a 40 years effort to bring solar into its virtually competitive today with other fuels. But it's still a very small fraction, the renewable energy in the world, although in absolute terms it's quite a bit and growing quite a bit, but it's still a very small fraction, got a long ways to go. I believe in 20 or 30 years, we still will have fossil fuels as a dominant energy source. It's just not, each fuel, an energy source has its own characteristics and its adaptability, its convenience of transportation and storing and so on and so forth. And those new fuels that are coming in have quite a few issues that need a lot of work before they become a mainstream and replace the fossil fuel energy in the world.
You suggest that primarily because of heavy transportation in particular with the trucks. We start to see the introduction of the Tesla vehicle and the dreams that Elon Musk has to have that much more pervasive high-speed trains that are going to be driven off electricity. I'd love to have the other panelists jump in on this debate as well. What maintains the dominant role of fossil fuels because of heavy industry, because of heavy transportation? It's as simple as that, and I welcome others. Noe, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. First of all, am I?
Yes, you can
hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. First of all, I agree indeed that it will take a long time. But I mean, let's start with the beginning. I think there is, from the moment that I started in energy, which is a really long time ago, I mean, nobody was really talking about renewable energy. I mean, it was like, a really small thing. And nowadays, it has become definitely more mainstream. Something really has changed. And to be honest, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, I would have been much more skeptical. But now, what I see happening, and this is not only government policies, this is also what's happening at the ground floor. I mean, at company level, at cities, in regions that are moving towards, they want a cleaner future. They want, less pollution in their cities. It's what the young people want. They want, a more sustainable energy future. And they're right to ask that. Now, is it going to be quick and is it going to be fast as some people would want? Probably not. It's going to take a huge time because it's a huge challenge. So, I mean, it's good that there are targets, but it's going to be with bumps in the road, obviously. And there is the nuts to crack is indeed transportation, as you said. Electrification helps, but that is very slow. It's really slow. It's much slower than many people think it is. And then you have the problem of heavy trucks. You have the problem of petrochemicals. I mean, the whole issue of manufacturing industry. I mean, a lot of the Western world was built on manufacturing industry. Nobody has shown how we can run a chemicals industry, how we can run a steel industry with zero emissions. But that's what we need to be started thinking about. So I think a lot of R&D is still needed to make that happen and to crack the nuts that haven't been cracked yet. I mean, power generation, yes, by now we know that, but that's not the whole thing. So I think we still need to do a lot of work there. And also, last but not least, let's not only talk about supply. in my little thing, which I still agree in this outlook, is that, you know, don't forget energy efficiency. The demand side is incredibly important, and we need to get much more handle on the demand side, also in this region.
You know, in fact, that was one of the key questions I wanted to bring up. Noy, do you want to just lower your clip because it's rubbing against your shirt?
What
Just lower it down. Thanks. Walid, I think it's a good time to bring it in because this has come up time and time again going into this OPEC, non-OPEC meeting in the very near term, of course, in the next couple of weeks. We're assuming that demand growth holds 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 million barrels a day. The last 2 years have held up quite strongly. To the ambassador's point here, is that equation starting to change when efficiency kicks in? We can't bank on at least 1 million barrels a day of rising crude demand.
Not yet, but I'd like to add a point to the discussion. What concerns me is the fact that we are in an era now, because of the shale oil, there's a cap on prices. And how can the Middle East deal with that, the oil-producing countries? I think this is the main question for the area. How can we deal with a cap on prices? Can we go over 50, 60? It doesn't look like it for the time being. And this is the main question, I think, for the producing countries.
But don't the two interchange with each other? This is, I'm almost suggesting, I want us to think provocatively beyond 2020. But you can almost have a perfect storm. We have energy efficiency that Noy's talking about it. Marwan was saying the technology is getting better and better, but you still have a role for fossil fuels. But I think, and you know, I'm no spring chicken, but this new generation doesn't think of the automobile the way we do. They don't even want to own an automobile. If they own an automobile, they want it to be energy efficient. They probably prefer it to be electric. That's quite a radical force in the market that could hit the next 10 years.
From demand, but also you have a new demand coming up because of the increasing populations, rising standard of living. So, you know, it kind of balance each other. I mean, Europe demand is going down, US is stable, China is increasing, India is increasing. So there is kind of stability there. But again, the point is for us from the Middle East, can we really manage our economies, diversify our economies to live with a lower oil price for the foreseeable future?
And your answer to that is we see the 2030 plan, that it's taking some bumps in the road, is 1 year into the process. I was in Riyadh last week. What is very impressive, it's not just the younger generation supporting the Deputy Crown Prince, but the elder generation as well believes this is the only option. So can Saudi Arabia lead that effort that some of the other smaller states have been pushing, but can it be delivered? And I'll come back to Ibrahim as well. Go ahead, Walid.
Well, I don't think we have a choice. We have to go through reforming our economies. I think we are in a late stage, actually. We have to start on that road. And if we don't do it, we are doomed for failure. Yeah. So we have to move, you know. We should say we must succeed. We don't have any other choice.
No option on the table? Dr. Ibrahim?
I think before we talk about energy efficiency in the Gulf, I'm talking about.
Sure.
We should talk about why did the Gulf countries transfer their break-even point from the cost of production to the fiscal break-even point. So what Walid talked about, it's very important. Why with the ceiling on 50 we have problem? No, we have a problem, yes, because of the Gulf countries changed that break-even point. So the break-even point fiscal policy for the Gulf countries, 3 of them about 100, 3 of them, the lowest one is about 60 or 70. Right. Of course, they have a problem. The main thing they have to do, they have to go back to the basic, that they are, if they are energy producer, they should act as energy producer, not as to meet government expenditure.
Right.
I will just give you an example. The budget of Qatar in 2001 was about $20 billion. Now, in 2014, it was about $240 billion. So this is where the break, I mean, they would have been the most efficient, and the fantastic edge they would have in energy, and they can control it. You see, they couldn't, now they try to control it at a low price, at 40. They had problem, that's why they went back in order to hold on. But if they were really The break-even point is the cost production. They could have gone to 30. And then they could have driven a lot of people out and a lot of energy out. So what I am saying is, the main thing now if we're talking about lesson, for the Gulf countries and maybe the big oil producer, is to detach their energy policy from the requirement of development. And they have to develop in a certain way and at the same time act as energy producer in another way.
Okay. I'm going to ask if we can have a microphone to the former prime ministers. I want to bring the political discussion into this debate as well and the influence the Arab Spring has had on this process. I want to ask one more question of Ibrahim and Dean Mark. I would like to have you jump in as well, if you don't mind. Former Prime Minister, the Gulf states reluctant to bite the bullet at a faster pace because of what we saw in the Arab Spring and worried about the political ramifications of cutting the budget too quickly. We see a mini revolution taking place in Saudi Arabia right now. You're working as an advisor here to the Emir of Qatar. This is a big concern. Is this why this transition is taking longer than expected in your view?
Well, let me start by one important lesson that everybody has to really realize is that reform is something you do when you can and not when you become obliged to do it. And actually, the thing that has been going on for some time is that there has been, let's say, a certain conviction in the region that prices that that were going up to the level of 100 and more are going to be sustained there. And that was not the case, without realizing the changes in the economic scene and the changes in the technological side in terms of, let's say, the cost of producing other types of energy, the shale oil and others, besides the, let's say, the other types of energy. So this is the situation. Here we are. If we are going to stay without really triggering real reform, whether it is in the Gulf states and elsewhere, I think we are going to really end up in a very difficult situation, politically, socially, and economically. Now we have to really see what has to be done. There should be a real effort in terms of the Gulf states towards real diversification of the economy, and at the same time being more efficient and in terms of really emphasizing productivity and real engaging all sectors of the economy to really adapt to change in terms of real involvement and real participation in terms of the private sector and elsewhere. So these are matters that would need to introduce real reform, whether it is for the oil-producing countries or for the oil-consuming countries, like in the Arab world.
Good. And the leftover from the Arab Spring is that political hesitancy, not knowing they can keep that strike of balance and keep their local citizens happy while pushing reforms at a very fast pace or a faster pace?
Well, for sure, actually, reform is not a honeymoon trip. Definitely, it really requires really biting the bullet in one way or another. Doing it at the right time, it is less costly and less painful. And doing it later on, it is more costly and more painful. So how to really engage all sectors of the let's say, society to participate in this process of reform. For sure that people, they have to believe in reform and to have a high level of confidence in the state, which is really starting the reform, because the state cannot really engage all sectors of the people to go in the reform process if they are not really practicing the real reform, more transparency, more effort towards fighting corruption and the like. So, because you cannot really ask the people to bite the bullet, take the pain, and they are finding that there are certain sectors of the society they are lavishing in terms of spending or wasting resources and so on. There is an effort that has to be made all through to join all sectors of the society in order to participate in the process of reform that would have to tackle many aspects of the society and the economy.
Great. The mic is open to our host today and Dr. Al-Naimi as well. If you want to jump into this debate as well, do you think the transition is taking place, Mr. Al-Attiyah? Do you find that in Doha that the transition is well underway despite the World Cup coming up in 2022 and the obligations on that front?
Well, I think, in my experience, since I joined the ministry in that time, 1972, and the same year, I joined the Qatar delegation to OPEC, but it was in the back seat, so I always look. What the vision that time, I saw 73, the rise of oil price, and 81, the highest, and then 85, the lowest, and take us 15 years to go back, and every time, we met in OPEC, we're trying to create quotas and other, and we're trying, how to solve it, but we failed many times how to solve it, even during, when we fixed the quotas in the 80s and 90s, no one respected, everyone is cheating, because this is the way that, because as Dr. Ibrahim said, I agreed, that the visionary, if how to have even, you want to break even, or you want, the way how to manage your budget. The Gulf countries, they must learn from the past so they can manage the crisis, not the crisis manage them. And today, it's very, very confused because they need a high oil price. They need a break even, either a country with $85 or 90 or 70, so they can to manage their own budget. And this is the problem. We are only trying to manage the budget, but we cannot try, manage the crisis. The crisis is more dangerous than the budget. So the way that we always advising all oil producers, especially the Gulf producer who depend heavily in oil and gas, that we have to be sure, and we advise them how to manage the crisis. I remember, every time when we talk, many years, they always talk about we will succeed, not avoiding, not to independent in oil and gas. We will invest and reinvest and other resources. So the time we don't need oil and gas, we can manage it. It didn't happen.
Not yet. No.
We wait for a long time to see how they will manage it, but they cannot. So I believe today, oil, when the falling of oil price in 85, we wait 15 years to go back. So now even the oil price, when it's in the lowest now, people, in some speculation, others, they say, oh, 2017 is the balance year. Oh, the market will go back. Even when the oil price a few weeks ago or a few months ago was 57, somebody asked me, Your Excellency, do you think that now the oil is take off? I said, no.
Yeah, they were hoping for 75.
I said, no. It's only a part of the speculation. They mixed geopolitics, they mixed North Korea, the Third World War. So the speculation, they create the big news. So the oil price, psychological, go up, not physically. We don't see a strong demand yet.
Okay, very good. This is terrific. You jumped in. Dean Mark, we haven't heard from you on a couple of these different elements and incorporating the 2020. This is an open forum, so go ahead and jump in. I'll come here, and then Ibrahim and Walid, Noy, please.
Well, I guess I'd like to go back to the early part of the discussion where we were talking about renewable energy sources and that sort of thing. I agree with what my colleagues on the panel said. The foreseeable future, 30, 40 years, we're going to have hydrocarbons as an integral part of our energy mix. The beauty of hydrocarbons is the The production of the energy is very well known and almost routine. The distribution equally so. If we look at renewables, we're getting better at production, we're getting better at distribution. The other beautiful aspect of hydrocarbons, though, is that the storage of the energy is almost natural, right? So you've got a tank that contains oil. You have a cylinder that contains compressed gas. It's relatively straightforward. The equivalent for storing electrical energy is not at that stage. And I think the critical piece in making the renewable energies for wind or solar or whatever is a mechanism to store that energy. We can distribute electricity, we can produce electricity, but to store it in an efficient way, and just to use Elon Musk's example of an automobile, if I have to fill my petroleum-based automobile with fuel, with energy now, what does it take, 5 minutes? And I can drive that 5-minute fill-up, I can drive that hours and hours and hours. If I take Elon Musk's car, it takes me hours and hours to fill the tank, so to speak, and I can drive it for relatively few minutes. That's where we have to be.
Okay, so we're looking at 2020 and beyond. I don't know if you believe this as well. Could we have a major breakthrough on electric power storage in the next 5 years, though? To my point of the smartphone in my opening remarks, technology and disruptions happening much faster than it did 15 years ago. I don't know if you...
I believe we could. I mean, there are some remarkable things happening now in materials research. The so-called nanotechnologies hold a lot of promise. We're gaining a lot of knowledge about various types of batteries, not the traditional types. I think we're on a verge of something perhaps within the next 5 years.
Good. Before I broaden the conversation, I want to ask Stephanie if you can put question 2 up. I don't mean to mess you about, but it plays right to Dean Mark's comments here. Can we get question 2 up on the survey? If you can grab your electric clickers, we'll get you to, that's generational. I'm calling them clickers still, something like the 1960s. Just a second, will you? Let me just get the question out, and then I'll let you jump right in. Just a second. So this is question 2. Last month, Tesla's market cap surpassed that. If we can bring that screen back up, thank you. That of General Motors, making it the largest US-based automaker by that metric, $51 billion. How's that for a market cap for the small sales? GM sold about 10 million cars in 2016. Tesla, roughly 76,000 electric cars. Oil and gas producers should view this as A, a good news story, that you're so much excited about the future, or B, a bad news story, that electric is going to disrupt the oil and gas business in such a radical way. Let's bring up the 10-second counter, please, Stephanie, and let's go ahead and vote on that. We lost that Jeopardy music that I really liked. What happened to our music? Let's see the results. Yes, we have a very divided group about the future. How do you like that? Marwan, what do you think?
If you can pass it.
I think B, but I think all these questions...
It's a bad news story. For what reason?
Yeah, but let me just say, in general, all these questions really, the missing element in them is when. In other words, the answer will be different if we look at short term versus long term. You know, this is very important. Storage, maybe between now and 2020, I think I'm less optimistic that it will get to a stage. It is the holy grail of renewable energy.
Excuse me for a second. I just wanted to pick up on your comment. Between now and 2020, you're not optimistic about storage, but in the next decade, yes, from 2020 to 2030 is what we're looking at here.
Yeah, I think that's much more likely. The work on storage has been going on for a very long time. And the fact that, you know, the last Secretary of Energy in the United States, MEES, had a priority when he came to office for energy storage. We're still not there. It is technically a very difficult thing to do, but also the resources needed to bring it into market is just not there, or policy really isn't there. But for 10 years, for 2030, I think it'll be more likely that storage will be here. Everybody knows that the payoff, once it's really here, is huge in making renewables, you know, a mainstream, and perhaps even speed up the transition to that source of fuel.
Great, Noy?
Let's not forget, in that sense, that There's a huge R&D effort going on. It's called mission innovation, I think is what you're talking about. A lot of countries are pooling their resources in doubling their R&D efforts in the coming area, particularly in these kind of areas of storage, etc. I mean, nobody really knows when this is going to come up, but that we are definitely trying and attempting very hard to push that frontier, I think, is obviously the case.
Good. We have all hands up everywhere, so the elders are speaking.
I think what we have here, we have the realist and we have the optimist between us. Even here I can see that. I am a realist. I looked at the history.
I was going to call Marwan a centrist. He's saying between 2020 and 2030 we'll have battery storage.
I looked at it. I found out, for instance, from 2005 to 2015, coal, which is, not very clean energy, increased more than natural gas and more than oil and more than anything else. And somebody here mentioned it's policy. It's the kind of policy that we do. If we are supporting coal, and if people like Trump doesn't care about environment, and there are many of him, how these policies gonna affect all these efforts? So this is what we really have to be careful. So I hope you are right, but I am not sure you are.
Right, but you're also suggesting it needs a policy nudge, is what you're suggesting.
Yes.
It needs a policy priority.
But
Walid, I interrupted you twice. I want to make sure. Sorry.
My question is, can we reform our economies while these things are going on? Or are we standing still on hydrocarbon? This is the question we have to ask ourselves.
Well, let's. I'm glad you
gave
brought
the
it up.
answer. You gave the answer. You see, we have to. You have to.
Well, we have to, yes.
Okay, let's bring it up here because this is the apropos question. Stephanie, question 3, if you don't mind. Have your little electronic devices ready, please. Disruptive technologies, big data, automation, artificial intelligence, or AI, are set to accelerate the transformation of the oil industry over the next decade, and thus make it difficult for the Gulf NOCs to maintain current employment levels. Can NOCs maintain their dual responsibility of revenue generation, to Ibrahim's point, and the social contract of national employment, which the chairman of our foundation was alluding to as well. So can NOCs maintain their dual responsibility of revenue generation and the social contract of national employment? Do you agree? A, B, disagree? And I got to hear that Jeopardy music again. Can we get the 10-second counter up? Oh, I feel so much better now. This is interesting. Can NOCs maintain their dual responsibility of revenue generation, the social contract of national employment? To your point, very difficult.
Yes. Can I respond?
Yes, of course.
I think the question is a little bit, should be different.
You're just disagreeing with everything on this panel this morning.
I mean, they can, but not if
Did
they
they pay you really well to be an advisor
yes or no.
to disagree?
I would say yes or no. Yes?
Yes or no.
no.
I agree with that.
Because it depends on what are the policies they're gonna follow
implement
in the future.
Right.
They can do it if they follow the right policy. They will not do it if they do not follow the right policy.
Good. Do you think there's a danger here? And I'd love to get your thoughts on this. I looked at the Deputy Crown Prince's interview last week with Al Arabiya and also on national television. And I was in Riyadh. People were absolutely glued to the interview, straight into Iran, which some were disappointed with because it was about the 2030 plan. But there are believers that they can make the change. What concerns me about that, and you're working here in Doha, but looking into Saudi Arabia, that the targets are too high. They suggested 1.5 million jobs created by 2020. I went and looked back. Saudi Arabia generates anywhere from 15 to 25,000 new jobs a year. So it's well off that 1.5. Are they setting the bar too high and then you can't meet those expectations? Ibrahim, Mark, you guys want to jump in on this?
We started this transformation business way before the price collapse. We started it with our Qatar National Vision, 2008. By the way, earlier than Saudi Arabia. There were a lot of ambition. We had a national development strategy that had a lot of things. The major pillars were economics, environment,
yes,
and social progress, and employment, of course.
absolutely impossible.
First you have my voice and then you have this, right?
I think it may be the Emir that's messing with the electronic system. He doesn't like what you're talking about. But,
No, but really, I mean, we are in a better situation, especially the 2015.
Because of that start.
Because of that start. We had a head start. We did not start right away. That's why I think if proper policy, the policy though should be comprehensive.
And realistic.
It shouldn't be we increase the price of gasoline today, later we put 5% taxes later. No, it should be comprehensive. We should have, and it should be transparent. The people should know what we are doing. This is what we have. This is what we can do. You should be with us. So, and again, it has to be transition. It has to be a target, but maybe the speed should not be too fast.
okay. We have about 5 minutes left. Marwan, you had a comment?
I just
I would
wanna-
ask keep it brief.
About employment and targets in general. Whether that target is high or low really depends on, is it picked out of the air, or is it a target that's tied to a set of policy tools that are designed to get to that point? Now, employment, depends on what the economy structure is. Some industries are labor intensive, others are not, like hydrocarbons are not really labor intensive industries, more capital intensive. And so how the target is, whether the target will be reached or not, depends on whether there are actions taken to diversify the economy and create other industries that are more labor intensive than the hydrocarbons.
Okay, one final electronic question. Sorry, Stephanie, to be jumping you around. Let's go to question 5 because of time, but it's apropos of our discussion here. Question 5, please, if we can. Which of the following macroeconomic trends could have the greatest impact, directly or indirectly, on the Middle East oil industry over the next few years through to 2020? Which of the following macroeconomic trends could have the greatest impact, directly or indirectly, on the Middle East oil industry? A, Gulf states continuing budget deficits, very apropos to our conversation. China's slowing GDP growth, everybody keeps on suggesting it, I haven't seen it yet. Rising interest rates in the OECD, returning to historic averages. We are historically low today. Trump's America First policies, or India's emergence as world's third largest energy consumer. If we can get the clicker up, please, and you vote for just one, of course. If we can have the counter and the music, please. There we go. Aha, to your point. There's not a lot of confidence on delivering here. We're too far behind the curve. Is that the idea, Ibrahim? No? We're too far behind the curve to reform?
Well, I wouldn't dare to speak for the region, so
Don't be too conservative. You're now an elder. You can speak your mind.
I think I should be modest here. But I mean, if you look at energy efficiency, for instance, I mean, yes, the region is moving slower than the rest of the world at the moment, for sure. So I think there's untapped potential there. And I think in macroeconomic budget management, as you said, I think as well.
Go ahead, Ibrahim, very quickly.
Yes, we are a little behind. Some are maybe far behind, some are, and it depends really what you're going to do also. It's not, even if we started now or 2 years ago, it will be fine if you do it the right way.
Okay. Marwan and Walid?
What concerns me more also is the fact that the region is not stable. I mean, we have already now problems in Iraq and Syria and Libya, countries that, being devastated. Migration, immigration that Prime Minister Sinora talked about, in the millions, we have to be responsible for somehow. And also possible conflicts in the near future. This could really devastate any possibility of reform, the way the military conflicts are taking place in the region. So this will be another burden on our
Well, let me follow up on that very quickly, though. Is that because, again, the spending continues because we're worried about stability within our own ranks, or because you're spending and meddling in other countries, very much like the U.S. did in Iraq and spent a fortune?
No, what I'm saying is that the problems in the area will be a burden on the other countries in the region.
Financial burden or just...
both, financial, political, and,
Okay.
And this could delay reforms. And I think this is something we should worry about also, think about.
Great. Well, particularly because Iraq, for example, needs at least $50 to be able to sustain.
Not only Iraq, Syria and Libya are devastated.
Absolutely.
And Algeria is weak. So in Sudan, of course, so in Yemen. So, you know.
So this is beyond 2020 or leading up to 2020. This is your biggest concern, obviously.
This is leading up to 2020 and probably beyond. I mean, it's going to take many, many years to rebuild these countries. Will not be in a year or two.
Dean Marks suggested this is a perfect time to convene the elders and the outlook for 2020 and beyond. Now we know because we went a full hour and you realize how complex it is, but I'm glad we had a chance to get the feedback from the floor. I appreciate the comments from the front row as well. Let's give a warm round of applause to the elders and their analysis for the last hour. Very much.
Thank you.
John, and thank you very much, our elders. And to wrap up this session of energy, elders, and in the context of what His Excellency Ali Naimi referred to in his speech earlier, of how important it is to continue to invest in the knowledge architecture of today's youth so that they can be both inspired and able to take the reins of the industry going forward. We're delighted to be today celebrating 4 individuals who've been recognized as future leaders and exemplary models for the next generation. And these are the winners of the 2017 Oryx GTL Student Awards for the advancement of postgraduate education. The awards, which are now in their 4th year, highlight the importance of building postgraduate education capacity in the Middle East and in energy-related fields. And today's winners, who were nominated by a 5-person selection committee, were all educated here in Qatar in institutions of higher learning. So to present these 4 awards, I'm delighted now to invite His Excellency Al-Atiyah to the stage there to my right, please, for the presentation, and to join him, Mr. Muhammad Al-Inazi, who is the CAO of Oryx GTL as well, please, there to my right. Thank you, gentlemen. The first award of this is the PhD award category, and I'd like to congratulate Mr. Ahmad Muhammad Kaivani, who is the recipient of this award. Mr. Kaivani actually couldn't be with us today, but his brother Abdullah will be accepting the award on his behalf. Ahmad was a PhD candidate in the Sustainable Environment Program at the Hamad bin Khalifa University here in Doha, and he's currently working as a research associate at the Qatar Environment and Energy Research Institute, CERI. He earned both his bachelor's in chemical engineering and master's in environmental engineering from Qatar University. Please do take a seat. Our second award winner is also a PhD candidate, and he is Amir Baloch. Amir is a PhD, so please, Amir, please make your way to the stage. Congratulations. Amir is a PhD candidate in sustainable energy at the College of Science and Engineering at HBKU, and his research revolves around technical and economic assessment of solar energy technology. Congratulations. Gentlemen, please take your seats, please, on stage. Please have a seat. Thank you. The next 2 awards are in the master's category, and the first one goes to Haneen Wadi Abdel Rizq. Congratulations, Haneen. Please do come up. Haneen received her master's degree in materials science and technology from Qatar University, and she's graduated with distinction last year and is planning to pursue her PhD studies in sustainable energy at HBKU. Congratulations. Please take your seat. And our other master's student award winner is Mr. Ra'id Hasiba. He completed, please make your way, congratulations, to the stage. Ra'id, thank you. He's completed a Master of Science at Texas A&M University at Qatar last year, and he's been researching carbon capture and storage and energy integration techniques. Congratulations. He's currently joining the PhD program at Texas A&M University in College Station in the US to continue his work. So congratulations to our 4 postgraduate students, and please, if you could each get up and have a photograph with His Excellency Al-Atiyah and the Oryx GTL. Congratulations to our winners.